Hello, welcome to this week's yoga session. Today we'll take a closer look at Virabhadrasana 1 and standing poses, and we'll break it down into different parts and then reassemble the pose and then put it into a short vinyasa flow. Take a moment to get comfortable. Reach the sit bones back, tilt the pelvis forward, rooting through the sit bones, and then lifting first through the waist, then through the chest, then through the collarbones. Broaden the shoulders, draw the shoulder blades into the spine, down the back as you take the heart forward and up. And then take the base of the neck back slightly, lengthen the back of the neck. And then notice if any of those actions are creating a stiffness, and ease up just enough that you can feel prana flowing. You're going to feel a sense of expansiveness and freedom in the body. Now close your eyes, turn your attention to your breathing, breathing diaphragmatically, or even better, into a back breath, breathing into the diaphragm, low, mid, and upper back. Allow the chest to remain passive as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Allow the breath to become a little slower, smoother, softer. As you continue to practice your breathing, begin relaxing your face as well. The forehead, the eyebrows, the eyelids, the eyeballs, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the belly of the tongue, the root of the tongue. Then introduce a very gentle movement of the head, floating it a little left or right, just until you meet the first hint of resistance, and then not pushing into that, just floating over the surface, where you feel it, but it's a very subtle sensation of resistance. And keep cultivating a sense of heaviness in the head, relaxation in the muscles of the eyes and the cheeks and the lips and the tongue. The better you get at relaxing your face, the less stress you will experience in life. So keep coming back to the face, softening, relaxing, releasing. Notice if your teeth are clenched or touching, and just part your teeth slightly, release the bottom jaw, letting it hang open, slack-jawed slightly. As you continue to roll the head around lazily, take 2 or 3 more breaths. Coming back to center. Roll out the shoulders individually and then together. Opening into our first twist, leading with the right hand, reaching around behind, crossing the left hand over. Lift, broaden, expand, rotate, and then breathing into that with a deep, complete breath. Breathing into the pelvic floor, the back, and the belly, and then continuing into the upper back, and then the chest, and then the collarbones. 2 or 3 breaths. Coming back to center. Then taking the left hand, reaching behind, crossing the right hand, lifting, broadening, rotating, and then breathing into the second side. Couple more breaths. Coming back to center, circle with the ribs. And reverse directions. And then roll out the shoulders. Okay. And coming back to center. So when we begin working with Virabhadrasana 1 and Virabhadrasana 2, our standing poses for today, the orientation of the pelvis becomes important, and there's a tendency to engage the lower erectus spinae too much, lifting the tailbone, creating too much arch in the low back. So we're going to start with cat-cow, and in cat-cow I want you to pay particular attention to the lower area of the core and to the movement of the pelvis, and notice as you lift the tailbone and engage the muscles in the low back. Notice how that feels. And then as you tuck the tailbone and expand the lower back and hollow the abdomen. And think about hollowing the abdomen, drawing the abdomen in as you exhale in the pose. And pay attention to how that feels. Coming to your hands and knees for cat-cow. Starting in table, knees spread hip width, hands shoulder width. Now on the beginning of the inhale, lift the tailbone, drop the belly, open the chest, look up, and then try to feel the muscles in the lower back as you lift the tailbone, arch the low back a little bit. As you start to exhale, begin to tuck the tailbone under, but as you're doing that, think about expanding your back, your low back, broaden and lengthen the low back. And then begin hollowing the abdomen, drawing the intestines up under the rib cage slightly. And then on your own, continue. Pay attention to the movement of the pelvis, but also the sensations behind the movement. 2 or 3 more repetitions. And then back to neutral. Now, without worrying about your breathing for a few moments, just focus on the movement. Lift the tailbone, drop the belly, open the chest, engage the back muscles until you feel that engagement. And that will be the tendency in Virabhadrasana 1 and 2 that we want to avoid overworking those muscles. So now relax those muscles. And then think about the tailbone moving away from the chest and dropping slightly. And then begin to lift up through the abdomen and draw the sides in. So draw the sides in towards the spine. And then as if you're pulling your intestines up under your ribcage slightly. And broaden the low back. Now remember how that feels. And when we're working in the standing poses, try and recreate that. One more time. Lift the tailbone, drop the belly, and then tighten the low back muscles. Remember how that feels. That's what we want to watch out that we aren't doing too much. And then release the tailbone, sink the tailbone, broaden the back, hollow the abdomen, draw the sides in, draw the intestines up under the ribs, and remember how that feels, firming up through the lower core. Now, a couple more cat-cows without thinking. And then improvise. Try 4 or 5 positions for your hands, adding asymmetry, and then just begin to feel your way around, a little free-form movement. Three or four more breaths. Coming back to center. Tuck the toes under. Walk the hands in close to your knees. Lift the knees. And then coming into a standing forward bend. Hands on your thighs or hanging into a bigger stretch if you prefer. Make sure your low back is comfortable, that your legs are comfortable. Come up high enough that that's true. Both knees bent slightly. Lift the tailbone, sink the belly. Draw a stretch into the back of the legs without feeling anything behind the knees. If you're feeling it in the back of the knees, bend the knees a little more. Bend the left knee more. Stretch the right leg. Bend the right knee more. Stretch the left leg. Go side to side a few times. Then stretch both legs evenly. Take 2 or 3 breaths. Stretch the exhale into a sigh. And then when you're ready, roll up, buckle the knees, slip the hips under you, stacking the vertebrae as you come up smoothly, and then roll out the shoulders. Now, when we're trying to integrate new information or increase awareness or refinement into a pose, it is very difficult to do that when you come into the pose in a deep, challenging position. Your attention is really focused on trying not to injure yourself, on trying to hold the pose, trying to fight off exhaustion, balance issues. So if we come out 70-80% of the way out of the pose, we can do the pose and we can employ all of the things that we're trying to incorporate in the pose and begin to take them into muscle memory. Then when we go back into a deeper pose, we can pull from muscle memory. So Virabhadrasana 1. So we'll step our feet about half the distance that we normally might use for triangle pose or warrior 1. Then we're going to turn the left foot out 90 degrees. Lift the right heel, take it a little wider, set it down. The back foot is turned in at 45 degrees, give or take, and the front foot is turned out at 90 degrees. Now the first thing we want to focus on is spiraling the left leg. So I want you to put all your weight into the ball of the big toe so that the outside of the foot starts to come off the ground a little bit. You can lift your big toe off the ground and root through the base, through the ball of the big toe. Now you can allow the outside of the foot to come back to the floor but keep most of the pressure on the ball of the big toe. Now as you do that, pull up on the quadricep, up on the kneecap, and then try to rotate your thigh to the left. Externally rotating the upper thigh. Focus on the upper thigh, lifting and externally rotating. Focus on the lower leg, internally rotating, reaching through the ball of the big toe. Most people, if this is new to you, this spiral, for most people it takes a few weeks or months practicing yoga to really take this in. So don't get frustrated, don't try too hard. Don't look for immediate results. Just keep playing with this idea of spiraling the leg. Now, once we have that spiral, bend the knee just 15%, just slightly, and then reestablish that spiral. Root through the base of the big toe, pull up and externally rotate your thigh. Now bend the knee just a little more, and keep doing that, rooting through the big toe, pulling up and out on the thigh, so that with the knee bent, you're still spiraling the leg. Okay, good. Now, we're going to think about rotating the hips. So take your left hip and reach it back and bring your right hip around. And we want to be facing as close to the 90-degree angle as we can with the hips. Now, the wider we go with our legs, the more difficult this becomes. So as we go wider, we'll let the back heel come off the ground. But for now, keep your back heel on the floor. Rotate your hips and keep working on bringing that right hip forward reaching through the right heel. The right heel reaches down, the right hip comes forward, the left hip pulls back, and then spiraling the leg. Now holding on to all of that, see if you can feel what's going on in your hips. And remember what we did in cat-cow? Arch the back, lift the tailbone, let the belly spill forward, and create a stronger arch in the back without doing anything that puts you into discomfort or into danger. Notice how that feels. Now when we raise the arms overhead, that's what starts to happen in the low back if we aren't guarding against it. So now, let your tailbone sink, draw the pelvic floor up, and then keep drawing up through the abdomen and sinking the tailbone. Don't over-exaggerate it, just enough to correct and maintain good posture. Chest is lifting, and then your chest is rotated to face the same direction as your hips. Now float the arms out, turn the palms up, extend overhead, and don't worry about the arms. We'll work on those in a few moments. I really want you to focus on the legs, the hips, and the abdominal core, the low back. Tailbone sinking, abdomen pulling in, sides pulling in, chest lifting. Spiraling the left leg, rooting through the back heel. One more breath. And then rotating. Turn the right foot out 90 degrees. Lift the left heel, take it wide, set it down. Bend. First start with a spiral. Spiral the right leg. Root through the ball of the big toe, pull up and externally rotate the upper thigh. Keeping the spiral as you bend the knee 1%, 10%. Stop when the knee is directly above the heel. Re-establish the spiral. Keeping that, bring your left hip around and reach the right hip back, keeping the knee where it is. Now root through the left heel. As you bring the left hip forward, push the left heel into the floor. Try and push the outside edge of the left heel down. As you bring the left hip forward, reach the right hip back, spiral the right leg. Now holding on to as much of that as you can, arch the low back, lift the tailbone. Notice how that feels. And then let the tailbone sink. Lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, draw the sides in, lift the chest, firming up everything below the rib cage, keeping the low back long, the abdomen firm, the hips rotating, the right leg spiraling, the left heel pushing through the floor. Float the arms overhead, but focus on everything from the below the ribs down. Take a breath and release. Come back to center, step your feet together, take a moment to rest. Do a few Vinyasa sun salutations, and then we'll revisit Virabhadrasana 1 in a moment. So standing with your feet hip width, outer edges parallel. On the inhalation, float the arms overhead. On the exhale, reach the hips back and release your upper body into a forward bend. Come down part way, or if you prefer, all the way. And then buckle the knees. As you start rolling up, slip the hips under you, roll up like a rag doll. Stretch overhead on the inhale, release on the exhale, and repeat. As you warm up a little bit, it may feel good to go further into your forward bends, which is fine, as long as it's feeling safe and pleasant and healthy. Five or six more repetitions. Couple more times. Hold your next overhead stretch. Add a side stretch. Lift the left heel, flare the right ribs. Lift the right heel, flare the left ribs. Go side to side. And then float the arms down. Supported forward bend, or release into a deeper stretch. 2 or 3 breaths. Stretch the exhale. And then rolling back up to standing. So, quite often we can maintain good posture until we start raising our arms over our head, and because our awareness is dominated by our hands, we allow the hands to go where we think they should be, and to do that we allow everything below to cascade out of alignment in order to get the hands right. And so what we want to do is redirect our awareness into the lower core, and then do the best you can with the hands. Don't worry about how far back they go. Now, to help with this, we'll use a wall. And any wall or door, anywhere where you can raise your arms overhead, and a flat surface. Now, I'm going to stand with my heels close to the wall, and then I'm going to lift the tailbone, arch the back, just to remember what that feels like. Now I'm going to let the tailbone sink down the wall, and if you're touching the wall with your hips, actually rotate the hips until you feel the tailbone slide down the wall slightly. Then I'm going to lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, and keeping my back against the wall, the low back, and the shoulder blades. And then I'm going to begin to float my arms out and up. And when I meet resistance in the shoulders, the tendency will be to allow the hips and the low back to come away from the wall in order to get your hands into position. That's what I want you to avoid. So let's try this again. This time we're going to step forward just a couple inches and bend your knees slightly. Bend your knees just enough that your hips touch the wall. Now, rotate the pelvis, sink the tailbone slightly. Don't over-exaggerate that. We just want to take some of the arch out of the low back by sinking the tailbone down the wall, lifting the pelvic floor, firming the abdomen, draw the sides in, pressing the shoulder blades into the wall. So the pelvis, shoulder blades pressed into the wall, the tailbone's dipping, the abdomen and core is firm. And then begin to float your arms out and up, and then just keep lifting till you meet the first resistance. Now, instead of trying to take your hands back, think about taking your inner armpit or your shoulder blades back. So from the shoulder blades and the inner armpits, draw back. And the hands will drift back, but you aren't really thinking about that. You're thinking about bringing the shoulder blades back. Notice if you lost your contact with the pelvis and with the low back. Now feel what that feels like, and try to remember that for Virabhadrasana 1. Lift the chest, draw the abdomen in, draw the sides in, firm up here, draw the shoulders back, and keep your alignment. Float the arms down, relax. Now we'll switch over, do a few 12-step sun salutations, and then we'll revisit Virabhadrasana 1 as a deeper standing pose. Coming to the front of your mat, from prayer position, sweep up, breathe in, swan dive, breathing out. 2 repetitions. Right foot leading, deep lunge, left foot following it back into plank. On an exhale, press down. Draw through into cobra and hold for 2 or 3 breaths. Focus on the upper back. We've been working the low back a little more. Shrug the shoulders, lift the shoulders, draw the shoulder blades together and down, reach the chest forward. Take another breath or two. Try to adjust so you feel the mid and upper back working more. Press the tops of the feet into the floor slightly. Downward facing dog. Breathe into the pose, drawing the chest towards your feet, floating your shoulder blades away from the feet. Now bend the right knee, reach the left heel towards the floor, and then try to lift the left arch, the shin bone. So the heel is reaching down, the arch and the shin are lifting up. And then bend that leg and switch sides. Reach through the heel, lift the arch, lift the shin, lift the kneecap, lift the quadricep. Go side to side. Don't forget the rest of the pose. As you're working the legs, maintain some consciousness of the arms, the hands, and the back, and the chest and the shoulders. Take another breath or two. Step the right foot all the way up to the front of your mat. Big lunge, breathe in. Standing forward bend as you breathe out. Overhead stretch. And then as you bring the arms overhead, drop the tailbone, firm the abdomen, lift the chest, and take the shoulders back. And back to prayer. Second side. Sweep up. One more time as you raise your arms. Sink the tailbone. Lift the chest. Hollow the abdomen. Take the shoulder blades back. On your exhale, release into a forward bend. On the inhale, take the left foot. Step back into a deep lunge. Hold your breath momentarily in plank, and then as you breathe out, pressing down, draw through into cobra, roll the shoulders back, press the feet down, reach the chest forward, take a breath or two. Downward facing dog when you're ready. If you remember how to spiral the arms, it's similar to the legs. Root through the knuckle, the index finger, and then hollow the inner armpits, broaden the upper back. The upper arm externally rotates, the forearm internally rotates. Couple more breaths. Step through with the left foot, big lunge, breathe in. Standing forward bend as you breathe out. Roll up. Float the arms overhead, lift the pelvis, firm the abdomen, sink the tailbone, lift the chest, hollow the inner armpits, broaden the upper back. Back to prayer and release. Take a breath or two. Notice how you feel. Okay. Trikonasana, triangle pose. Step wide. Turn the left foot out, turn the right foot in, and then spiral the left leg, which we've already practiced. Root through the base of the big toe. Pull up and externally rotate your upper thigh, but this time don't bend the knees much. 1%. Just enough that they aren't locked. And then lengthen through the lower rib cage and place your left hand on your thigh or your shin or the floor, wherever you're comfortable. Broaden, expand, breathe. Right hand can stay on the hip, or you can float the right arm out. Don't take the hand back, take the shoulder blade back, the chest forward. your mind wanders, come back to the left leg, spiraling the left leg, and then from there build the rest of the pose around that action. 3 or 4 breaths. Look for a sense of stability in the breath, in the mind, and in the body. And then coming up and out. Rotate. Turn the right foot out, left foot in. Spiral the right leg, holding on to that spiral as you shift your hips to the left. The right knee bent 1%. The right leg spiraling. And then building the rest of the pose around that. Keep the lower rib cage long, hand on the thigh, shin or floor. Shoulders drawn back, chest is open, left hand on the hip or float the left arm out. Open the chest. One of the most important and most often neglected aspects of your yoga practice is that the poses should be held comfortably and steadily. So think about that quality of steadiness. If you've ever been in a crisis and there was one person who remained steady, mentally, emotionally, physically, that can make the difference. And it's true within our pose as well. If we can learn to be steady in our breath, in our mind, in the pose, in a challenging asana, it becomes more likely we'll find those qualities in life. When you're ready, come up, turn your feet pigeon-toed, and then work your way down part way or release and hang into a deeper stretch. Take a breath or 2 or 3. Stretch the exhale. Take another breath. Step the feet together, bend the knees, roll back up. Virabhadrasana 2. And in Virabhadrasana 2, the low back becomes problematic, and that's what we've been practicing, is maintaining stability in the lower core. So this will be a good warm-up for Virabhadrasana 1, which we'll be doing in a few minutes. So Virabhadrasana 2, turn the left foot out, turn the right foot in. A little wider than you were for triangle pose because we'll be bending the left knee. Spiral the left leg. Keep spiraling as you bend the knee 1%. Re-establish the spiral and then continue bending 15, 30, and stop before the knee comes out over the heel. We want the knee to be directly above the heel, not reaching out towards the toes. Now ask yourself, is this too easy? And if it is, walk your legs wider, your feet wider, and then lunge a little deeper. Keep that idea of spiraling the leg. So this left leg is very, very active. Now holding on to that, bring your shoulders back level with the hips. So a straight line from the shoulders through the iliac crest of the hips. Keeping that straight in the back leg, strengthen the back leg. And then introduce a spiral into the back leg. Root through the base, ball of the big toe, pull up and externally rotate the thigh. Now, if the right thigh is externally rotating and the left thigh is externally rotating, the hip sockets begin to open. And we want that to be subtle, not brutal, not forced, but still a sense and awareness that yes, I'm externally rotating both legs and the hip sockets are opening a little bit. Now, float the arms, drop the shoulders, open the heart, turn your head. Now in the pose, without hurting yourself, do it wrong. Lift the tailbone, overarch the low back, notice how that feels. Now, Lift the chest, firm the abdomen until you feel the tailbone sink slightly. Now it's important that as the tailbone sinks, it's important that you're lifting the chest and you're drawing the sides in and you're drawing the navel in. Now as you hold on to all of that, just look out over the left fingertips. Take 5 or 6 more breaths. If this is too easy, check your alignment, bring the knee over the heel. If it's still too easy, walk wider, lunge deeper. Now remember, equanimity, breathing, steadiness of the mind, of the breath, of the body. The mistake people make is they come into a pose too deep and then try to learn how to be steady. And the way they do that is by clenching. So if you come into the pose a little more shallow, find steadiness, comfort, and then work your way deeper into the pose without leaving them behind. A couple more breaths. Second side. So on the second side, for most of you, try coming in maybe 90% as much as you did on the first side. Just close up a few inches, not much. And then put your attention on finding that steadiness. Turn the right foot out, turn the left foot in, spiral the right leg, and then without losing the spiral, begin bending the knee. Stop when the heel is lined up with the kneecap. Holding on to the spiral on the right leg, spiral the left leg. Straighten, strengthen that back leg, sink into that back hip. Bring your shoulders square with your hips. Now, lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, and lift the chest. Draw the sides in, draw the navel in as you lift the chest up. Feel the tailbone sink slightly, the low back creates space. And then holding on to all of that, float the arms, drop the shoulders, open the heart, turn your head gazing out past the fingertips. Now, if you're struggling, close up your stance a little bit so that you have the peace of mind to be able to pay attention. Spiraling the right leg, spiraling the left leg, but most importantly, pay attention to the low back, the core. Lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, lift the chest. Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha for those of you who've done that workshop. Now don't clench. If you squeeze too much in these areas, you cut off energy flow, prana. So we want to engage those areas, but firmly, a very light firmness, just enough to create spaciousness in the core. Couple more breaths. Looking for steadiness in the body, and in the mind, and in the breath. And then coming up, turning your feet pigeon-toed, releasing into a forward bend. Take a breath or two. Stretch the exhale. Step your feet together, bend the knees, roll back up. Now, before we do Virabhadrasana 1, I want to take time to warm up and try and expand and open up the calf muscle, which is a limiting area for most people in Virabhadrasana 1. First, I want you to pay attention to the alignment of my legs. So I'm going to use a wall. I'm going to put my hands against the wall. I'm going to step my right foot forward, my left leg back. I'm going to bend the front knee, the right knee. Now pay particular attention to the back leg. If the heel's on the ground and I'm not getting a stretch, I walk the foot back a little further until, as I lunge, the heel no longer touches the floor. So as I bend the right knee, sink into the lunge, the heel isn't touching the floor. Now I'm ready to start stretching. Now, watch the alignment of my back foot. I can stretch here through the center of the calf. I can take the heel out further and reach down through the outside or the inside of the heel. And I can bring the heel in, and then I can reach through the outside of the heel or the inside of the heel. So that gives me about 6 different angles to come at the calf stretch. Now take a look at the positioning on the wall. My hands are a little higher than my head, not a lot. Now when I step back, I step 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, bend the front knee, and then watch the alignment from my hand through my shoulder, through my hip, through the back foot. We want a straight line. So not this, but this. Then I imagine doing down dog, and I push, I spread the fingers, root, and I do down dog with my upper body. I sink the chest, float the shoulder blades, and then I push from the shoulder. I extend, and I use that energy to push through the back heel. So give that a try. Find a wall. Place your hands a little higher than your head. Step your left foot forward. Step the right leg back. Bend the left knee, and then start adjusting. Put your hands higher or lower on the wall. Bend the front knee more or less. Reposition your back leg until with the front knee bent, the back heel is not quite reaching the floor. Now start off in symmetry. Take your heels straight back. Do down dog with your upper body. And then as you extend out of the shoulder, use that energy to push through the heel. Take a couple of breaths. Try to push through the outside of your heel. Take a breath or two. Push through the inside of your heel. Take a breath or two. Try to feel how that rotation shifts the sensation in different areas of the calf muscle. Switch sides. Bring your right foot up alongside. Step the left foot back. Bend the front knee. Sink into your lunge. Reposition until your back heel is just off the ground. Then do down dog with your upper body, positioning your hands higher or lower on the wall. And then reach through the shoulder joint, extend, and use that to push through the back heel. Push through the outside of the heel. Take a breath. Push through the inside of the heel. Take a breath. Step up. Take the right foot back. Now, we'll play with the variations. Find your position. Straight line from the heel of your hand, through the shoulder, through the hips, through the back heel. The back heel is off the ground. Now first come into a symmetrical stretch. Then bring your heel in 15 degrees. And then push through the inside of the heel, through the outside of the heel. Try to move the stretch into different areas. If you notice an area where you feel like you need it more, feel free to stay there. Otherwise, lift up a little bit. Now take your heel a little wider out to the side, the opposite direction. And now push back. Press through the inside, the center, the outside of the heel. Again, looking for an area that perhaps is a little tighter than the others. Take a breath or two. Step up. Take the left foot back. Lunge, reposition. Start with a symmetrical alignment on the back foot. And then internally rotate, bring the heel in 15 degrees. Reach through the inside of the heel, the center of the heel, the outside of the heel until you find a sweet spot. Take a breath or two. Lift the heel, take it wider, set it down. Push through the outside, center, or inside of the heel. Find a way of creating a healthy stretch in a new area. Take a breath or two. And stepping up. Turn around while you're at the wall. Lean back with your hips, walk your feet forward. Feet about maybe 2 feet away from the wall. And then hang into a gentle forward bend, supporting weight with your hands on your thighs or your shins, or hang. Both knees bent slightly. 5 or 10 breaths. Breathe deep, stretch the exhale. Couple more breaths. And then coming back upright. So we're going to do one last thing before we do the full pose. And this time, learning how to come into our lunge a little more deeply. Now for this, a coffee table or a chair or railing or bookshelf, something that you can put a little bit of weight into will be very helpful. And typically people don't go into a pose as deep as they can because they aren't sure if they have the strength to hold or not. So you'll notice I've got my hands on a nice steady support. And I turn the right foot out, step the left leg back. I bend the knee, bring the knee directly over the heel, and then I might go a little deeper. And I use my arms to take some of the weight. And if that's easy, I rotate the hips, walk the foot back a little more. And here I'm going to see how deep can I come down. Don't come any further than hip level with the top of the knee. Don't let the hip sink below the knee. So the front thigh should be level like a coffee table. And then notice how this feels, using your hands to take as much of the weight as you need to. And then if it feels okay, just take your hands off and hold with your leg muscles. Take a breath or two, just to make sure you have the strength to hold at a deeper level. Switch legs. Use your hands to help you come up, switch out, and step back. Rotate the hips. Sink into your lunge, walk the back foot further, sink deeper, and then see how far down can you come, using your hands to support some of your weight. And then you could think about not using your hands and seeing if you can hold. Take a breath or two. Just reminding yourself that you do have more strength than you may have remembered. Step up when you're ready. One more forward bend to rest. 2 or 3 breaths. This will be our last repetition coming up. Breathe deep, stretch the exhale. Couple more breaths. Bend the knees, roll up, stack the vertebra. So now putting everything together, Virabhadrasana 1. And feel free to come out sooner or hold longer. This will be our peak for tapas for effort for the class. So if you need more of a workout, just hold the pose longer, work a little deeper into the pose. There's a lot of information involved here. So if you're new to the pose, just pick up one or two things and don't worry about doing everything perfectly. And if you aren't sure if you're doing it right or wrong, don't go into the poses deep, do it more shallow. Doing a pose imperfectly and shallowly isn't that big of a deal. It's when we go deep into the pose without good alignment that we get into trouble. Turn the right foot out. Lift the left heel, take it wider, set it down. Now, as we come into the pose, the limiting factor is going to be how far we can rotate our hips, keeping the back foot on the floor. Now, there's only two safe ways of doing the pose. One is keep the heel down and don't rotate your hips, and don't over rotate. So you rotate your hips. When you meet resistance, you just stay there, but then don't turn the shoulders. Shoulders lined up with the pelvis. A very slight turn is okay, but don't crank around into a big turn. So whatever direction your hips are facing, shoulders face that direction, and then you do the pose. Now, if we want to get the hips all the way around and the back leg isn't cooperating, then we have to lift the heel. When we do this, it becomes a balance pose. And that's usually how I teach the pose. Let the back heel come off the floor, find your balance, and then rotate. Now, once your hips are facing straight ahead, spiral the front leg, bend the front knee, sink into your lunge. If that's too easy, walk the front foot forward, sink a little deeper. Now, bring your belly back. Sink your tailbone, lift the chest, draw the sides in, lift the pelvic floor, draw the abdomen in, lift the chest, holding on to all of that. Sink a little deeper into your lunge, and then keeping the low back, the tailbone sinking, the abdomen drawing in and up, the chest lifting, holding on to all of that, float the arms. Now, take not your hands, but your shoulder blades back and your chest forward. Broaden the upper back. Now breathe, and then remember, steady and comfortable in your breathing, in your mind, and in the pose. At any point, come out and rest. If you get a second wind, you can come in and work a little more. Reach through the back heel. And as you reach through the back heel, try and bring that hip forward. Spiral the front leg and bring that hip back. Lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, lift the chest. Hollow the inner armpits, broaden the upper back. 1 or 2 more breaths. And then come into center. Take a pause to rest. Supported forward bend, or walk your hands to the floor. 2 or 3 more breaths to rest. Breathe deep, stretch the exhale. And then second side. Coming back up, turn the right foot out, turn the left foot in. Spiral the right leg. Begin bending the right knee. Widening your stance if you want to work harder. Now, find your balance, lift the back heel, rotate your hips facing straight ahead with the hips. Now try to reach through the back of the heel. Place your hands on your thighs, pull your belly back. Lift the pelvic floor, firm the abdomen, lift the chest, sink the tailbone. Holding on to all of that, float the arms overhead. Draw the shoulder blades back, the inner armpits back, broaden the upper back. Reach the chest forward and up. This is easy. Sink a little deeper into your lunge. But don't lose control, don't let the belly spill. Keep lifting the pelvic floor, firming the abdomen, lifting the chest, drawing the sides in, drawing the navel in, lifting the chest up, sinking the tailbone down. 5 or 10 breaths. Come out sooner if you need to. One more breath. Coming back up, turn your feet pigeon-toed, and forward bend. Breathe deep, stretch the exhale into a sigh. Walk your feet in a little closer, coming down to your knees. We'll rest with back roll. If you have your own roller, go ahead and grab it. If not, fold a blanket long and thin, or narrow rather, and then roll it up as tightly as you can. Unroll the blanket to make this easier. Roll it up more to make it more challenging. Remember, we want to be relaxing and resting. So if it's unsafe, unpleasant, too much sensation, or you can't relax, unroll the blanket. The roller should be under the upper shoulder blade, so the tops of the shoulders are extended over the roller. Knees can be bent or straight. You can support the head, or if you prefer, you can extend the arms overhead or horizontal. Keep the elbows higher than the roller, so don't bring the elbows down towards the hips. Take a breath or two. Breathe deep, stretch the exhale into a sigh. Then lift the hips, push yourself over the roller an inch, set your hips down, and relax into the new position. Three or four breaths. And then repositioning, lift the hips, push yourself over the roller an inch, one vertebra at a time, working your way down the length of your spine. In each new position, practice breathing and relaxing. With an exhale, surrender. Surrender the exhale, but also the body and the mind. On your own, continue this progression, lifting the hips, repositioning, setting the hips down, relaxing. If you hit a problem area, unroll the blanket a little bit until you can relax safely. Go for a couple more minutes. If you finished early, go back and start over. And if you have not yet reached the halfway point, speed up a little. Ten or 15 more breaths to finish up. If there's any neglected area of the spine or a favorite spot, just use the last 5 or 6 breaths to finish up there. When you're done, bend the knees, lift the hips, remove the roller, set it to one side, draw the knees in and rock side to side. Take a moment just hugging the knees to allow the low back to decompress. Coming to a gentle twist, and then pigeon pose, and then Shavasana. Any leg variation is fine. If you aren't sure, keep both knees bent and together, and swing your legs to the left, and turn your upper body to the right. Take your right hand, reach up towards the ceiling, and then slowly open to the right, turning your head to follow. Now, if something doesn't feel right, it's because it isn't right. So if it's a little kink or a crick, something isn't right, begin to experiment. Reposition your hips, your shoulders, your shoulder blades. You're also always welcome just to back off the twist as much as you need to. It should be pleasant. Not unpleasant. Now focus with a complete breath, a complete back breath if you're able to. And as you finish breathing in, feel the shoulder rise. And as you exhale, let the right arm sink. 2 or 3 breaths on the first side. Switching sides. Come back to center. And whichever leg variation you did, repeat that on the second side. If you aren't sure, bring both knees to your chest. Keeping the knees bent, roll your legs to the right, turn your upper body to the left. Float the left arm out. Feel the left shoulder rise as you take a deep, complete yogic breath. Feel the shoulders sink as you exhale. Two or three breaths to finish. Come back to center. Now bring your right knee into your chest, straighten the left leg away from you a little bit. And we're going to roll into pigeon pose. If you get confused, any way of getting to pigeon pose is fine, but try rolling slowly to your right. Keep your right knee close to your chest until your knee touches the ground. Then use your arms to lift yourself up, keeping your foot where it is. Slide the right knee out to the side, walk the left leg back, maybe bend the elbows, and then keep adjusting until you find a safe, pleasant stretch. Then relax into that and breathe. Stretch the exhale. Make sure you aren't getting any discomfort in the front knee, in the joint, or anywhere else for that matter. Stretch the exhale into a sigh. 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 more breaths. Now to switch sides, we're going to roll to your right, onto your back. This time bring the left knee into your chest, and then roll to your left. Use your arms to lift yourself up. Swing the left knee out to the side a little bit, walk the right leg back. Maybe bend the elbows. Position till you have a gentle stretch with no strain in the knee joint. And then breathing, stretching the exhale. 5 or 10 more breaths on the second side. Two or three breaths. Finishing with Shavasana. Take a moment to find a comfortable seated position. Spread the legs evenly, hands symmetrically, either side of the hips at a slight angle so the armpits are open. Draw the shoulder blades together. Now lift your head, tuck your chin, and lower the back of your neck to the floor, keeping the back of the neck long. Now any adjustments to be more comfortable is fine. If your low back doesn't feel safe, bend the knees or support with a bolster or a rolled up blanket. After you've lain here for a few breaths, you may notice something that doesn't feel quite right. Give yourself permission to reposition, to adjust. It's okay to be particular. When you're satisfied, take a deeper breath, and with the exhale, just letting go. Drop the exhale heavily. And let your whole body soften, grow heavy, and melt into the floor. Relax the face. Forehead, eyebrows, eyelids, eyeballs, a space behind, beneath, and around the eyes. The cheeks, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth, the throat, the chest, the belly, the groin, the pelvic floor. Fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. The toes, the feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the thighs. Loosen hip sockets, release the buttocks. Bring your attention back to the breath. Bring your attention back to the breath, breathing diaphragmatically, smooth, slow, fluid. Breathing a little deeper. Take a complete breath, belly, ribs, chest, back, and shoulders. See if I can turn into a yawn in a lazy stretch. And rolling to one side. Pushing up to a comfortable seated position. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. Virabhadrasana 1 is one of my favorite poses. Remember, if you struggle with the pose, just close up your stance and don't try so hard, and just focus on finding that steadiness and comfort. And then with that, over time, your strength, your balance, your flexibility improves, and you'll find you can go deeper and deeper in the pose. But let your goal be strength, but more importantly, comfort and steadiness. Okay? And measure success by that. And over time you may find that it becomes almost a meditative practice. Again, if you're new to the pose, don't be overwhelmed by the amount of detail. Just pick up one or two new ideas and integrate that into your pose, and then after a few weeks or months, pick up a couple more ideas and begin working those into the pose. Remember that a lot of yoga students have been practicing these poses for 20, 30, 40 years. Taking on more detail as they go. So do it at your own pace and in a way that makes sense to you and works for you. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.